Hello, hi, welcome. Wishing you all a very good afternoon. I hope you're all doing very good today and you've been having a great day until now. So, yes, today's session is going to be on single sign on simplified, one identity for more than 90 applications. I am Sharda, product expert in Manage Engine AD Self Service Plus from the marketing team of Manage Engine. And I will be your presenter for today. But before we get into the session, I hope my voice is audible and you have no issues in viewing the display of the screen. If you have any issues during the session or right now, please drop in a message in the chat box provided. All right, thank you so much. So we're going to be talking about single sign-on, how to enable single sign-on, provide one identity for users in your organization, one identity for more than 90 applications. So yes, we're going to be talking about this working with multiple applications today from the AD Self-Service Plus portal. And thank you all so much for taking the time away from your busy schedule to make a little time for this webinar, the webinar that I'll be hosting. And with that said, let us quickly jump into today's session. So yes, we're going to be talking about the advantages of deploying a single sign-on solution in your organization. So I'm sure in today's work scenario, users are expected to work with multiple applications to not only simplify the tasks, but also reduce the workload. So I'm sure everybody uses a mail account and they use multiple applications to manage probably help desk, to take care of their other needs according to the organization. And that is exactly why the focus is on single sign-on, because when users are pushed or users are put into a situation where they have to handle more than 3 to 4 applications on an everyday basis. I recently conducted a survey which said that almost 70% of the users make use of a minimum of 3 to 5 applications on an everyday basis. And yes, imagine the plight when the user has to remember the password of multiple application, taken the effort to log in every single time and access the application every single day. And probably remembering the password and logging in might not be so tedious, but the situation worsens from the administrator's end. The IT administrator goes through an extremely difficult situation when the user does not have access to the account, has forgotten his password. So that is exactly why we are focusing on single sign-on, a single sign-on solution. So the major advantage is that it is simple and extremely secure to access users' business applications. So we're talking about one portal and one-click access to more than 90 applications for each and every user on an everyday basis. And talking from the administrator's perspective, naturally, when users do not have to remember their passwords and login or make a login attempt every single day, every single time they wish to access an application. The user productivity naturally increases because, like I said, it is one portal to access more than 90 applications by just one click. And naturally, the help desk calls or tickets that is raised because of a forgotten password or a locked down account drastically reduces. And with AD Self Service Plus, we're focusing on eliminating password related help desk calls and tickets. So we're not just trying to drastically reduce the password related help desk tickets, which happen to be almost 30% of an organization's help desk calls. So we're focusing at completely eliminating that 30% of the help desk tickets by focusing on password management, by empowering users to password self-service. So that's the idea. And obviously, the major advantage of single sign-on is that it provides one-click access to major applications that users have to make use of on an everyday basis, like the G Suite, Zendesk, Salesforce, ServiceNow, Office 365, Workday, and many, many more. I'm talking about more than 90 applications. So these are the major advantage. These are the demands of every organization in today's working environment, and that is exactly why the focus is on single sign-on. All right, so we will look at the AD self-service plus advantage. I'm sure there are multiple single sign-on solutions available in the market, but what makes AD self-service plus special when it comes to deploying the single sign-on and making use of it in your environment for your Active Directory users? So the first advantage is security. We take care of access to applications with the help of two-factor authentication. So you as an administrator or an IT specialist or an IT technician or a super admin or anybody from the administrative department can enable the two-factor authentication. So you can see the list of authenticators displayed on your screen. I'm sorry about that. So you can see the list of authenticators displayed on your screen, right from Duo Security, Google Authenticator, RSA Secure ID, Radius Authentication, the verification code sent via email and SMS. So one of these authenticators, all these are available, but one of these authenticators can be enabled right from the AD Self-Service Plus portal. So that can be done specific to OUs and groups present in your Active Directory. So one user who belongs to a particular group or OU has to ensure that they go through the Duo security for authentication, whereas another user might use another method that has been enabled for him by the administrator. So we're talking about two-factor authentication, two layers of security. As the user logs in, the first factor of authentication is nothing but the Active Directory password, the native Windows logon password, which the user definitely has access to, which the user can make use of complete self-service right from password changes, password resets, account unlocks, self-update of personal information, and much more right from the AD Self-Service Plus portal. So basically, the user, when making use of the AD Self-Service Plus portal, has absolutely no issues with respect to managing his or her Active Directory passwords, Active Directory user accounts. So the first factor of authentication can be verified, can be authenticated, and the second factor of authentication, which is enabled by the administrator, should also be verified. The identity of the user should be verified with the secondary factor of authentication, and this can be the authenticators listed on your screen. Like I said, Duo Security or Radius Password, whatever is enabled for the user belonging to a particular organizational unit or group can be done. And once both the factor of authentication is verified, once the user has proved his identity, has proved his authentication, he will have seamless access to more than 90 cloud applications. Once again, you can control the access that you provide to users. You can control the access for applications provided to the users by enabling and customizing it based on OUs and groups present in Active Directory once again. Also, any questions regarding this session, during the session, please put it forward in the questions tab. I will take time to answer the question during the session itself, which will make the session much better by making it an interactive session. It'll be fun. And if not, you can always drop in a message to me later in the questions tab or the chat box, and I will take time to answer all your questions after the session. So yes, please keep your questions coming. And like I said, security being a major concern in today's environment, we're focusing on prioritizing security, prioritizing application access, and in that concern, single sign-on is definitely going to ensure that users' identity is not compromised on while accessing more than 90 applications, because we're talking about 90 applications here. And yes, it is a big deal, because when user gets or breaks into one system, one user system, he will be able to misuse more than 90 applications. So we take security very, very seriously. So that is one major advantage that AD Self-Service Plus provides. The second being, users can make use of their existing Active Directory identity as an authentication source to access all these applications. So what do I mean by making use of Active Directory credentials as an authentication source? So initially we already saw how the Active Directory password acts as the first factor of authentication to log in and be able to access the application. So in this case, what happens is that when an end user has a logon request directly from the application and directly to the application, single sign-on enabled application, for example, Salesforce, a user logs into the Salesforce URL and tries to log in as a user, an SAML request is passed on and an Active Directory authentication takes place in the AD Self-Service Plus server. And once the SAML response is reverted back to the application, the user is granted the logon access. So how will the request be passed right here? So when a user tries to log into his Salesforce account, he will be redirected to the AD Self-Service Plus page instead of requesting for a password, where the user can make use of his Active Directory credentials, can key in his username and password, and thereby able to successfully access the Salesforce account because the AD authentication is complete in the AD Self-Service Plus server. So this is exactly what I mean by making use of users' Active Directory identities, existing identities as an authentication source to access applications. Also, I spoke about you as an administrator taking control of which application access to be provided to which user, and that is what we call policy-based access control. So you can choose which organizational unit and group can have access to which application right from the AD Self-Service Plus portal. So what I mean here is that when a user belongs to a particular OU or group present in the Active Directory. For instance, he belongs to an organizational unit called HR. You can restrict access to the users present in the OU HR to certain applications that will be useful only to those users, and thereby he will not have access to the other applications. We're going to see an example of how this works in today's session. So for example, if a user belongs to HR, he will have access to all the employee access control applications right from G Suite, Dropbox, Workday, Slack, and also People, Purely HR, and Bamboo HR. So this is the flowchart displayed on your screens, whereas the user belonging to HR will not have access to Salesforce, Zendesk, and ServiceNow. So this is what we mean by policy-based access control. You can decide which user needs privilege to access a particular application and thereby customize access to applications based on Active Directory organizational units and groups. So I'm also going to show you how that works. I'm going to show you how you can customize policies, self-service policies in the AD Self-Service Plus portal, and thereby restrict or provide access control to applications. And that is what we're going to be seeing today as well. So quickly jumping into today's agenda, a quick read. We're going to be talking about Active Directory-based single sign-on for more than 90 cloud applications, how to deal with multiple passwords and increasing application count in organizations, providing users a one-click seamless access to cloud applications, thereby they don't have to manually enter the credentials every single time. We're also going to be talking about making use of AD as an authentication source, the Active Directory credentials as an authentication source, where users will make use of their native Windows logon password and access applications like Salesforce, Google, and much more, and also control the single sign-on for each application based on OUs and groups present in the Active Directory. So I'm going to have the agenda displayed on the screen and quickly jump to the AD Self-Service Plus Password Self-Service Management portal. So yes, the first step that I'm going to do is log in as an administrator. So yes, you can have a quick view of the dashboard. The dashboard will give you a brief idea about all that's going on in your environment. But before I get into the single sign-on part of today, I'm going to show you the kind of Active Directory setup that I've created for this particular webinar. So you can see that I've created an organizational unit under my name, that is Sharda, and created sub-organizational units and also a group. So each of these units have users sorted, trying to replicate an organization. So you can see users belonging to HR, user belonging to finance and admin. And all these users belong to the organizational unit Sharda. So the first step that you do when you get started working with AD Self-Service Plus is set up the domain. So I've already done that. You can see that I've configured the domain SSP Workshop and the status is successful. You can always add multiple domains, edit domain details, update the domain objects to make sure that any changes that happens in the native Active Directory environment is reflected in AD Self-Service Plus as well. Also, we have a 90-minute Active Directory scheduler running by default, but you can also schedule a scheduler to update the dashboard. So the time can be customized. You can set up a frequency and also view the status of how it happens. For example, you can see that the logged out users has happened at 10 o'clock today. So yes, that is one thing that you can do with respect to the domain settings. That's the first and primary step you do when you get started working with AD Self-Service Plus. So now the domain settings is done. Let us move on and have a look at the configuration tab. So you can see that I already have self-service policies created. So under the configuration tab, under self-service is policy configuration. What is a policy? A policy is what we call a self-service password module where I can customize the users belonging to a particular organizational unit or group present in my Active Directory and thereby give them permissions or restrict permissions to all the activities that happen in the AD Self-Service Plus password management environment based on these policies. So you can see that I've already created a policy admin, HR, and finance. I've given permission to all the actions, reset, unlock, self-update, and change password. All of them belong to the same domain SSP workshop. Also, this policy that I've created right here is a replication of the Active Directory users and computers setup, the organizational setup that I've created. So all these users have been sorted into self-service policies right now. So now let's jump to the single sign-on part of today's session. You can see password sync or single sign-on present right here under self-service. I'm going to hit that and give you a quick run through of all the applications that we have. You can also do a password sync for multiple domains within an Active Directory, which comes under the password synchronization part. Purely HR, Evernote, Ring, People, GoToMeeting, Feedly, Desk, ServiceNow, BMC, Remedy Force, Big Panda. So we're talking about more than 90 applications. Freshdesk, Desk, Humanity, AHA, TrodPad, Slack, Workplace, Ignite, Zoho, Salesforce. Yes, we're talking about more than 90 applications. And I'm going to start with my favorite application, something that I use on an everyday basis. And I'm sure a lot of organizations make use of the G Suite. So let's start the single sign-on configuration for Google application. All right. I hope my voice is audible and the display is still clear. If not, please ping in a message in the chat box. All right, thank you so much. So yes, we're going to be starting with configuring G Suite, and I'm going to show you how this works for Google Apps, both from the AD Self-Service Plus end as well as the Google application end. So it's a three-step process. The first step starts with configuring G Suite single sign-on module from the AD Self-Service Plus portal, and that is what I'm going to do now. I've chosen the module single sign-on. The domain that I'm working with today is evergrowingtech.com. My display name is going to be G Suite SSO, and I'm going to provide the application access for G Suite to all the policies, that is, all the users belonging to admin, HR, and finance. So this is step one. Also make note that the configuration steps vary from one application to other. It's not the same. It's almost similar from the AD Self-Service Plus end, but definitely not the same with respect to the application end. And we also have a dedicated help document with stepwise instructions and screenshots to guide you set it up for your convenient application. So with respect to the certification I'm talking about, the login, logout, and error URL is available right here. For certain applications, we make use of the fingerprint. For the others, the SSO certificate or the metadata file. With respect to G Suite, it is the SSO certificate. So I'm going to download the SSO certificate right here. And also make note of the SAML SSO details, that is the login, logout, and error URL. So this is step one with respect to the AD Self-Service Plus portal. So now what I'm going to do is log in as an administrator to G Suite. Proceeding to the second action, logging in as an administrator into my Google account. I will be redirecting myself to the admin console, and yes, now we will be navigating to security, and this is where the single sign-on setup works. So yes, the navigation part is also listed in the help document. For Google, we have to log in to the admin console and hit security. The steps varies from for each application, so make use of the help guide to set up the configuration for the application that you are setting up single sign-on for from the AD Self-Service Plus portal. I'll also show you the help document for the next application. So when I said G Suite is my favorite application, I also know how to get working with setting up single sign-on. All right, so for the service provider end, set up single sign-on with third-party identity provider. The sign in, sign out, and change password URL is the same as the login, logout, and help URL. So these URL links need to be copied right here. Also, under the verification certificate, I have to upload the certificate that I just downloaded. So I'm setting up single sign-on with third-party identity provider and hitting save. So yes, my settings has been saved. I will quickly show you what I did once again. I landed up in the security tab, entered setup single sign-on, navigated to the third-party single sign-on identity provider setup, enabled it, which is check the box. I've already done the URL pasting, but the URL listed here is the same as the login, logout, and error URL available right here. I've uploaded my certificate and I've saved my settings. So this is all you need to do with respect to the G Suite end. And yes, with respect to Google application, all you have to do is hit save to complete the configuration. So that is how simple it is to configure single sign-on for G Suite. And trust me when I say the single sign-on setup is complete. That is all you need to do to enable single sign-on for all the users in your organization and provide them a one-click access to accessing the G Suite, all the apps listed under Google. So let's have a look at how things work from the domain user perspective, for which I am going to log in as a domain user, which is none other than me. I'm going to log in as Sharda as a domain user into AD Self-Service Plus. And you can see the applications tab available right here. Let me hit that. And there you go. Google Apps is available. All I have to do is click. And you can see that an email ID is listed. I'm going to hit next. I have an error message. The error message says could not find your Google account. So do you have any guesses as to why the single sign-on has not worked in spite of setting up and configuring it the right way, both from the AD Self-Service Plus end as well as the service end, that is G Suite? If you have any guesses, please take a guess in the questions tab or the chat box. I'm going to give you an answer right away. So if you remember, we did the configuration for evergrowingtech.com. But what is listed here is Think Today Technologies. I don't think that is the domain I was working with. So let's go back to the admin end and see where we went wrong. So quickly checking, the Google Apps configuration is still enabled for evergrowingtech.com. I'm sure I did the right steps for G Suite as well. So if you're wondering how the account that is Think Today Technologies got linked, I'm going to give you an answer right now. That is your answer. The default mail attribute or the SAM account name is what is picked up as the account linking format for any single sign-on or password synchronized application. So by default, AD Self-Service Plus picks up the mail attribute. So now let's go back and see where we can modify the changes. Clicking single sign-on once again under configuration. You can see account linking available here. I'm going to hit account linking. Select a provider, which is G Suite. And you can see by default, the account attribute that is selected is the mail attribute. So the account attribute or the account format can be set up in such a way that the Active Directory attributes can be made use of. So you can see that for Google Apps, the system identified is right. It is evergrowingtech.com, but automatic account linking has been enabled and the account attribute that has been selected is the mail attribute. So naturally, the account format will not follow this structure, that is mail at evergrowingtech.com. It will just automatically fetch the mail attribute, the default mail attribute of the user present in the Active Directory. So now what I'm going to do is change this to SAM account name. So now you can see the account format is SAM account name at evergrowingtech.com. Let us see if this works. I'm going to hit save. The settings has been saved successfully. Jumping back to the end user portal and reloading the applications tab. Don't be surprised to see that Sharda at evergrowingtech.com has been detected. So what I'm going to do now is click to login. Sharda at evergrowingtech.com has been detected. One good news. Let's see if single sign-on works well by hitting next. Oh yes, it did. I've successfully logged in as Sharda Murthy. I have a welcome message. I have access to all the applications across my G Suite. And this was done without having to manually enter my credentials. So imagine the advantage, imagine the reduced workload, the improved productivity when this can be done for more than 90 applications in your organization. You definitely might not need it for 90 applications for every user, but even if a user has a one-click seamless access to 5 or 6 applications that he or she uses on an everyday basis, it still plays a major advantage because all the user has to do is log into the AD Self-Service Plus portal, navigate to the Applications tab, and choose the application he wishes to log into, click to login, and seamless one-click access to all these applications. So this is possible with the help of AD Self-Service Plus, and this is possible for more than 90 applications. All right. So what I'm going to do now is sign out and try to log in directly to my Google account with the mail ID that is Sharda at evergrowingtech.com. Once again, not surprising, I have been able to log in by just giving in my mail ID. So this is what I mean when I say your Active Directory credentials acts as an authentication source. So if you're wondering how this happened, it's because I'm still logged in as a user in my AD Self-Service Plus portal. And to have access to my AD Self-Service Plus portal, I need to give in my native Windows domain password, which is my primary authentication source, which is nothing but Active Directory based authentication. So with the help of Active Directory based authentication, Sharda was successfully able to access the evergrowingtech.com Google account without having to manually enter her password. All right, so let's look at another case where I am not logged into AD Self-Service Plus and I try and access my Google account directly from the URL, enter my email ID, which is sharda at evergrowingtech.com, and I'm going to hit next to see if single sign-on is still enabled. I have been redirected to the AD Self-Service Plus portal. Once again, this is what I mean when I said you can make use of one set of credentials, your default domain login password, your Active Directory credentials as an authentication source to access your Google account. So what I'm going to do now is enter my username, which is nothing but my Active Directory username, key in my password, once again, my native Windows domain password, logging into SSP Workshop, which is the domain I'm working with, hit login to see what happens next. Once again, with the help of my native Windows Active Directory credentials, I was able to access my Google account. So with respect to G Suite, we're talking about both identity provider and service provider based single sign-on. And this is available for almost all the applications. But once again, like I said, it depends on the application. It depends on the service provider. So this is how easy it is to work with G Suite. So let's look at another example, shall we? Let's look at another example. This time what I'm going to do is go to the help document, choose domain configuration, and show you that there's a stepwise instruction to set up your domain, work with multiple domains, and work along with setting it up for your organization. So this is the first step we spoke about. Also, a brief rolling out AD Self-Service Plus, which tells you workflow deployments, mail groups, password synchronization, notifications, search, self-service. So you can have a quick glance at what and how things work. And hitting know your product. This is categorized based on the native AD Self-Service Plus dashboard, the native AD Self-Service Plus tabs. So you can see a dashboard, reports, configuration, and admin tab. We are going to talk about configuration today. We're going to be talking about self-service, and the focus is on single sign-on. So like I said, we support both identity and service provider based initiated single sign-on. And also you can see that all the applications is listed right here, alphabetical order. So all you have to do is choose an application and get working with. So I'm going to choose another favorite, an application that we use very commonly across multiple organizations. So yes, to configure SAML single sign-on for Office 365, I said it's a three-step process. The first step is the prerequisite. So logging into AD Self-Service Plus and setting up single sign-on. This is what I'm going to do right now. You can see that I'm going to navigate to the configuration tab. Choose the module single sign-on. I'm going to download the SSO certificate, locate and click on single sign-on and work with this. So I've already done the download part. I've also copied the login and logout URL. So like I said, the SAML or SSO configuration or details that is required from the service provider and depends on each application. So for G Suite, we made use of the login, logout, and error URL and the SSO certificate. Whereas for Office 365, we require only the login and logout URL and the SSO certificate. So we're not making use of the error or help URL. And you can see that for Office 365, the configuration steps works around in PowerShell. So open PowerShell with admin rights, enter the below command. The commands have been given, stepwise instruction has been provided, along with screenshots to guide you how to go forward setting it up. So you can also drop in your mail ID to me. I can send you a video, a resource material on configuring Office 365 for single sign-on. So once this is done, that is the service provider end is done, we will be jumping back to the identity provider where we choose the module and then we select the policy access and click on save. So once again, here you can see that it's just the domain name and description. So we do not require to enter anything else. And this time I'm going to remove finance. So the policy access is going to be only to admin and HR. I want administrators in my organization to access Office 365 and also the users in HR. And I'm going to update it. So with respect to Office 365, I had already completed the configuration from the service provider end as well as the identity provider end. So we're going to just go about and see how this works for Office 365 right now. Let's try and access a domain user. Logging in as the domain user, then is Sharda. Clicking on the Applications tab, you can see that Office 365 is also listed in the application list right here. When I click to login, I did not go through any portal but directly landed into Office 365. And yes, the Office 365 domain that I was working with is Think Today Technologies and the mail attribute matches. So I was able to successfully log in. If not, I would have definitely got an error message or I would have been redirected to the Office 365 page and single sign-on would not have been enabled. I would have had to enter the password. So I will also show you that. You can see that Sharda has been able to successfully access the Office 365 account. Signing out. Let us look at the other case as well. Trying to access Sharda at thinktodaytechnologies.com. Once again, I was able to access without having to enter my credentials, without having to key in my Office 365 password. And this is because I am logged in as Sharda into the AD Self-Service Plus portal. So another example, once again, signing out and seeing what happens when I try to access Office 365. There you go, I've been redirected to the AD Self-Service Plus page where I can key in my credentials and log in. And the credentials is nothing but the default Active Directory attribute. All right, so that is how simple it is to get working with AD Self-Service Plus. That is how simple it is to configure single sign-on for multiple applications. And let us look at a case of another user. So I've logged in as Adam and I'm accessing the Applications tab. I'm going to click to log in to see what happens. So I'm redirected to the page, but I do not have an access. I do not have a direct single sign-on link. So let us check why. I need to spot admin. So yes, Adam is right here. I'm sorry, I need to spot Adam, and the default mail attribute is not the one that belongs to Think Today Technologies. So in this case, what do we do? Where one user has a default mail attribute which also matches the account format for Office 365 while the other does not. You can always customize actions according to your organizational needs, and that is one major advantage of AD Self-Service Plus. So going back to account linking, I'm going to show you that by default for Office 365 or Azure, Think Today Technologies is available, and the account attribute that has been chosen is object GUID. But what if I do not have a common setup for all the users? In that case, all I have to do is disable automatic account linking, because not only the difference where one user has a proper account format, which is nothing but the mail attribute, and the other does not, but also in other cases, in organizations, we might not have a default account format for all the users. Though it's a very common practice, we might not have a standard account format that we use for a particular domain, and even if we do, it necessarily does not have to be the Active Directory attribute. So in that case, it is easy to simply disable automatic account linking. So I'm going to show you how this works. I have a message which says cannot disable auto account linking for SSO enabled apps. So the disadvantage with respect to Office 365 is that we need an account format. I just forgot about that. So for Office 365, naturally the account format is not the default mail attribute that we set from the AD Self-Service Plus portal, but the object GUID. I completely missed out on this point. So let me go back and try to set it up for G Suite itself. So for evergrowingtech.com, I'm going to disable automatic account linking. All right, so I think the error is because I've already completed the configuration. from this end, and when I disable, there will not be a mapping. I'll look back into that and get back. But yes, you can always choose the disable Active Directory attribute. And in that way, what happens is that the user will have a, when the user hovers over a particular application, he has a choice to choose the account for which he would like to enable single sign-on. So in that case, click to uh, link account option is available right here. I'm sorry, link account option is available where I can manually enter the credentials to choose the account for which I would enable single sign-on for. So in this case, the user Adam will not be able to access because Adam has to follow the object GUID at account format for Office 365. And yes, so certain other applications as well have restrictions with respect to the formats that work around with. So one another example is that when you work with a particular domain with for Office 365, for example, Think Today Technologies, the same system cannot be used for password synchronization as well. And that is not from the AD Self-Service Plus end, because when you do the same thing for G Suite, you can make use of password synchronization and single sign-on. You can enable password synchronization and single sign-on for a particular system for G Suite, for a particular domain for G Suite, whereas Office 365 does not provide those privileges. So like I said, you can always make use of the help guide to understand how each application works with respect to configuration from their end, whereas from the AD Self-Service Plus end, it is pretty simple, secure, and straightforward. All you have to do is key in the required credentials that is listed, and you are good to go. You have enabled from AD Self-Service Plus. So what I've done here is set up the configuration for Dropbox as well. So I'm going to enable the Dropbox configuration, and what I'm going to do is update the policy or leave the policy to HR only. So now what we're looking at is giving restricted access to all the applications, restricting or controlling access based on applications. So once again, logging in as an administrator. So let's pick up one user from each organizational unit and see the access he or she has. So I'm going to start with admin and logging in as the user Sharada. So under the Applications tab, I have access to Google account and Office 365. So let's look at another user under Finance. Okay, let's check Andy's domain user login. So here under the Applications tab, Andy has access only to G Suite. And another user under HR, Adam. And Adam has access to Google Dropbox as well as Office 365. So this way you can control access to applications. So if you're wondering how that app happened, every time I set up a configuration for a particular application, I can choose the self-service policies or the users belonging to the self-service policies to whom I would like to give the permission to. That way you can control access to applications based on policies, which is purely based on organizational units and groups present in the Active Directory. So yes, going back to today's agenda, let's have a quick recap of all that we did. We saw how to provide, okay, I missed out on this part, jumping back to AD Self-Service Plus. So under the configuration tab, if you remember, we created policies. So under the advanced settings, you can enable two-factor authentication for any one of these authenticators, RSA verification, Duo, and Redis. And this way, the user, when they try to log into the AD Self-Service Plus portal with their Active Directory credentials, they will also have to verify their identity with one of these authenticators. So it becomes compulsory. You can mandate two-factor authentication for users based on organizational units and groups present in the Active Directory. Once again, right here under the policy configuration, so select the self-service policy, navigate to login two-factor authentication, and enable two-factor authentication. So the configuration for each of the other authenticators also needs to be done. So you can see that the configuration setup is available. And the same holds good with respect to multi-factor authentication as well. So for instance, if you do a duo security enable it for a particular policy right here, you can simply reflect it for two-factor authentication as well. You do not have to do the configuration twice. So yes, the multi-factor authentication comes into picture during a reset password or unlock account operation because password resets are as important as securing an account, because resetting a password is one of the easiest ways to break into a user's account and gain access. So we have multi-factor authentication for password resets and account unlocks, and a two-factor authentication which takes care of the login. All right, so this can also be customized based on OUs and groups present in your Active Directory. So starting with securing cloud apps with two-factor authentication, I just showed you how this works and how, making use of users' identity in Active Directory, we can ensure that users have a successful access, a seamless access to more than 90 single sign-on enabled applications. And this is done by verification in the AD Self-Service Plus server. And we also saw how we can control policies based on OUs and groups present in the Active Directory. So we saw an example of how all the employees had access to G Suite, whereas employee belonging to HR had access to G Suite, Dropbox, and Office 365. And in our case, employees belonging to finance had access to G Suite only. And also users belonging to admin had access to G Suite and Office 365 only. So thereby you can play around with policy-based access control and permit access to applications only to users who make use of certain applications. So for example, applications like Salesforce, Zendesk, and ServiceNow might not really be required for users belonging to HR. That way you can give access permission to these applications only for users in the sales organizational unit or group or the policy that you create in AD Self-Service Plus. So yes, we saw how to provide Active Directory-based single sign-on for cloud applications. We saw the configuration for G Suite and the identity provider configuration for Office 365. And thereby we know how to deal with multiple passwords and increasing application count in organization, and how to provide one-click access to cloud applications without manually entering the credentials. So we saw the example of both Office 365 and G Suite, where the user Sharda had access to applications without having to enter her application password, and also how, when she was not logged into AD Self-Service Plus, she was able to successfully access the account with the help of the Active Directory credentials, which she made use of as the authentication source. And also how you as an administrator can take the power to control single sign-on for each application based on OUs and groups present in your Active Directory. So with that said, I've covered all the said exercises in the agenda, and we have come to the end of today's session. Please keep your questions coming in the questions tab. I'm going to take time to answer every single one of them. So provide a seamless one-click access to more than 90 applications, the applications listed on your screen right now. And we are talking about simplifying single sign-on, and that can be achieved by Manage Engine AD Self-Service Plus, your password self-service management and single sign-on tool. So yes, I really hope this session was useful to you and you learned in detail about how to simplify user login with the help of AD Self-Service Plus. And you can always drop in a mail to me at sharda@manageengine.com or contact our support team at support@adselfserviceplus.com. Please drop in your queries, questions with respect to using AD Self-Service Plus or with respect to today's session. You can drop in a mail and we will ensure that we respond to you and help you enjoy the benefits of password management with the help of AD Self-Service Plus. Also, the video of this session, the complete recording of this session will be available online. It can also be shared with you. All you have to do is drop in your mail ID in the chat tab or questions tab available, or you can also drop me a mail at sharda@manageengine.com and I will make sure that the recorded resource material of this workshop reaches you. Please keep your suggestions, comments, ideas coming. You can always drop in a mail to us, drop in requests in the request tab that we have in the web page. You can also drop in a mail to me. We would love to take the effort to incorporate your suggestions, ideas. Might be towards the next session what you would like to see with respect to AD Self-Service Plus. What are the improvements that you think are required from our end? And I promise we will take the effort to incorporate all your suggestions, ideas, and comments. And I think that is what will keep pushing us to do much better in the coming years. So thank you so much. Also, I would like to thank every single one of you for taking the time away from your busy schedule. I'm sure you all have a tight schedule going on. Thank you so much for making time for today's webinar. It was an immense pleasure to be the presenter for today. I really hope that you had a great session and it was a great pleasure to have you on board. Any questions, please keep them coming once again. I'm going to sign off for today. Have a great day and a great week ahead. This is Sharda from the marketing team of Manage Engine signing off. Thank you so much.